All right, those sound like some lovely conversations. We'll have to carry them on afterwards when we're all having supper together. My name is Marcus. If we haven't had the chance to meet, we'll be reading from Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 13. It's on page 845 if you have one of our Bibles. I'll just pray briefly while everyone flicks across. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. We just pray for ears and hearts to listen to your word. Amen. All right, from verse 13. Some in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores things up for themselves, but is not rich towards God."
Good evening, everyone. My name's Ian, and I'm going to be continuing from 22 to 34. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn. Yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Well, I hope you got a chance to bring a Bible along tonight, and I hope you keep it open to that passage as we study it a bit together. Wealth, money, moolah, dollar bucks if you're a Bluey fan. We're tackling one of the big topics tonight, and it's worth saying up front that I have not particularly chosen this topic. We're just kind of going where Jesus goes as we go through Luke's gospel. He's the one setting the agenda, and yet it should be really no surprise to us at all that we get forced to confront our attitude towards wealth, because this is the most commonly spoken about topic by our Lord Jesus. He talks about money more than he speaks about anything else, and it's not because he's hatching some kind of elaborate con job where he wants to get his hands on our money. No, as we're actually going to see tonight, Jesus' concern in raising this topic is for our welfare. Jesus wants us to have our eyes open to the fact that what is going on in our pockets, in our bank accounts, in our desire to have more, this is the most dangerous thing that keeps people from trusting God properly. This is serious business tonight. Jesus loves us. He loved the people he was first speaking to about this topic. And so he, out of love, lays out this very clear warning. Please don't let money corrupt your heart. Please don't let money lead you astray, because it could. Now, Jesus has 4 points to make here tonight on the topic of money. Any one of them should be cause enough for us to kind of pause and think long and hard about how we treat wealth. Add them all together, though, one after the other, And it's just so clear. Our approach to wealth has to be different to the way the world teaches us to think about this topic. And it starts with this. Jesus pointing out that wanting wealth, it really is dangerous. Verse 13, have a look at there in your Bible. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." The topic of inheritance has come up. Specifically, this guy is saying, Jesus, help me get my fair share. My brother's been a bit of a jerk. Make him be fair about all this. This is quite a live topic today as well. You know, wills get fought over all the time. Nothing pulls a family apart faster than arguing over who gets grandma's prize china. But the actual issue is much bigger than just kind of deciding on the outcome of a will, isn't it? And you can tell by the way Jesus responds. Jesus recognizes that it's important for this man's good, but also for the crowds listening in, that he speaks about the huge danger here, the danger that's kind of lurking in the background of his request. He's saying, I want more. I want money. And Jesus is saying, check your attitude. Verse 14, firstly, he says, who made me a judge between you guys? Lead me out of this arm wrestle over the inheritance. But since we're on the topic of wealth, since you raised it, he says, verse 15, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Now, I reckon that those words, you and I could share that with anybody. And people would go, yes, this feels very wise from Jesus. In our culture, we do publicly say that greed isn't good. Jesus' teaching on this kind of topic has profoundly affected how we think. We look at greedy people and we think this is not right. Jesus kind of forms our base level morality as a culture. He really does. We hear Jesus say this and we think, yes, of course. There's more to life than stuff. That's what we say. What we do, though, I think it often tells a whole different story. Because it turns out that we kind of sort of maybe do believe that our possessions and our wealth are of immense importance. Chances are you've fallen into the trap, like I've fallen into the trap, like frankly everybody falls into the trap of thinking that it's your possessions, that it's your stuff, that it's your experiences, that it's your money, that it's your superannuation, that it's your comfort, that these are the things that make your life worth living. That having more of these things, having better of these things, that this is the key to unlocking happiness in this life. And what we end up doing is we build our lives around this kind of mindset. We shape our decisions on the basis of this kind of mindset. What job will I take? Who will I marry? Where will I live? We're always thinking, how do I get more? And so we need to hear Jesus when he says that this kind of thinking is not good for us. It's quite dangerous. Did you notice? Jesus doesn't say, FYI, greed, it's possibly not the best thing for you. He's much harsher than that, isn't he? Watch out. Be on your guard. These are things that Jesus is warning about that will damage us if we're not careful. We would be being awfully foolish if we heard Jesus say this and just kind of shrugged our shoulders and went, well, actually, he's talking about other people. He's talking about rich people. No. He's talking about us, and he's warning that wanting wealth can be very dangerous. Jesus' first big point, wanting wealth can be very dangerous. He keeps on going on. He points out that wealth won't last and can't help you. Wealth won't last and can't help you. Wealth is dangerous because it can't help us like we subtly think it can. Jesus goes on, verse 16. He told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. So, picture a rich man. He's a big-time farmer. He's got this bumper harvest. He's suddenly got more than he knows what to do with. It's essentially money. He's loaded. He's not sure what to do with it. He's just got so much. But then he has this idea. It's the same sort of idea that all sorts of people today get when they come into money. They think, I'm going to figure out how to use this to set myself up. This is the key to unlocking my happiness. Let's hear his plan. Verse 18, he says, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store up my surplus grain, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, be merry. He's like, I'm set. I'm set for life. I've won the lottery. Happy days. Now, it sounds a little bit wrong when we put it as bluntly as that, doesn't it? The idea that there can be this like straight direct line drawn between money and merriness, it's kind of crass. More money, more happiness. But even if we kind of wouldn't put it as blatantly as that, I think we often subtly think like this. If I can just get my hands on a little bit more, then I'll be happy. If I can just buy that new thing, it'll scratch that itch. I'll be satisfied. And perhaps it does, in one sense. Perhaps money and stuff can, for a minute, buy you that pleasure you've been craving. The problem is, though, and this is where Jesus goes, this is what Jesus highlights, the problem is that this kind of success, this kind of comfort, it's only very short term. It is very temporary in the grand scheme of things. You can't take it with you. Your stuff, your bank balance, it will not be there for you to keep you safe on the other side of death. Jesus continues the story. Verse 20. To this rich guy who's built up his giant barns, but God said to him, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you prepared for yourself? You fool, says God to this well-to-do fella. But because God can see the bigger perspective that having huge wealth is pointless when your life on earth is up. Being materially wealthy but spiritually bankrupt is a very, very bad decision to have made. You dummy, says God. Or you numbskull. And yet, it's a kind of numbskullery that I'm well aware affects me. God could say this to me. I've had a happier than usual week this week, and I was trying to think about why have I been feeling so good? It hasn't really been that different a week. And then it suddenly occurred to me, because this week I bought a new Nintendo. Fancy and shiny and, with that nice new tech smell, it was a birthday present for me from me. And having this object, having this thing boosted my mood. My emotions are sadly connected to stuff. And I'm certain you know that feeling. Maybe it's that deep sigh of relief that you feel when you finally see that your pay gets put into your bank account. You're like, yes, finally, I'm looking healthy again. Maybe it's the warm fuzzies you get when you open up the email from your superannuation fund and you realize, yeah, I'm on a good track. Things are looking great when I hit 67. Maybe it's that feeling that you're no longer missing out when you buy the latest and the greatest car or the latest and the greatest phone. We get sucked into this. That description God gives of this guy being a fool, being a numbskull, Jesus says that this actually applies to a heck of a lot of people. Verse 21, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. And that's tough to hear, isn't it? Jesus knows just how all-consuming the allure of wealth is. He knows just how much it compromises us, how it divides our affections, how, to put it bluntly, it pulls us away from being satisfied by God and what he has done for us. Wealth has that kind of impact on us. The desire to have more and to have better has that kind of impact on us. What Jesus is laying out here is a warning coming from a very deep place of love, concern. Jesus keeps on going, pointing out that wanting wealth actually just makes you worry more. I love how he puts it. In verse 22, he says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you'll eat, or about your body, what you'll wear. For life is more than food, the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor, they do not spin, yet I tell you, not even King Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? One of the biggest reasons we get caught up in obsessing over having wealth, having stuff, nice little stockpile for ourselves, one of the reasons we pursue this is because we, in our guts, feel insecure. We spend our lives stressing and worrying about how things could go so wrong. You know, how would I provide for myself if I couldn't work? How would I provide for myself if I lost my job? How would I provide for myself if disaster struck? We're stressed. And in response, our gut vibe is often to go, I need to pursue that plush financial cushion. Having a nice little pot of savings, that would make me feel like it's going to be okay. Or maybe for some of us, we're at the point where we're starting to think purchasing that cute little investment property. But if I can get that locked down and paid off, it's going to be okay from there on. But we feel as though locking these things in is the key to us sleeping well at night. Because that's the messaging that the world is pumping into us. And into this kind of worrisome mindset, Jesus says we could learn a tool or thing from birds and flowers. Specifically, we can learn from the way that they happily rely on God to meet their needs. You know, they don't worry about gathering in more. They don't worry about what they're going to wear. They're not worrying about where is my next meal going to come from. They're not worrying about how their retirements are going to work. No, instead, they just rely. They rely on God. They depend on God. And God shows what he's like as he meets their needs. As he gives them what they need, God provides for what he has made. God provides for his creatures, always has, always will. And Jesus says we are no exception to that rule. We tend to think that reliance on somebody else, that it's a sign of failure. Sign that you're kind of weak, that you couldn't stand on your own 2 feet. What a shame. Now, this is why we hoard. This is why we feel restless until we've got that bank balance. But God sees us being reliant, being dependent. He sees it as being a good thing. Something that will ultimately bring you closer to him. It's not just okay to ask someone else for help, but it's actually a good thing, says Jesus. It's that act of asking someone for help, it will guard you from thinking that you're in charge and that you got to solve all your own problems. It's not just okay to pray to God when we're in a time of need. Jesus would say it's essential, it's helpful. This is good for you. And this is, in many ways, the key to having true peace of mind, not worrying about the future. It's leaning into God and just accepting the fact that only he can give you the security that you're actually craving. Nothing else can bear that weight. Nothing else can scratch that itch. If you think that money is going to do the trick, then you have fallen hook, line, and sinker for one of the oldest lies in the universe. Being prudent with money, being wise with money, that's not a dumb thing. We're called to that in the scriptures, actually. But endlessly stressing because it's where you're finding your meaning, that probably is dumb. Saving up enough for your future, that's not sinful. But hoarding up more and more because it's the thing that's giving me my feeling of strength and security and significance, that probably is sinful. Which brings us to Jesus' last point. Yeah, what do you do when you're in our situation where you realize I've been entrusted with wealth? And you have. Even as a supposedly skint uni student, you've been entrusted with wealth. What do you do when you realize I've been given opportunities, I've been given stuff, but at the same time, you're also convinced that wealth, this stuff that's in my hands, it's not actually the key to my happiness. And that actually, if left unchecked, it could be damaging to my relationship with my God. What do you do at that point? What do you do when you're living the modern, Western, wealth-filled lives that we are all living? Jesus' answer is you invest in eternity instead. Hear what he has to say. Verse 32, he says, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom." He says, verse 33, "Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near, where no moth destroys." And then here's the king here all the way home. "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This is basically some investment tips from Jesus himself. Now, one of my big regrets in life is that I've never had the opportunity to properly study economics. I tend to make do by listening to the Planet Money podcast. It scratches that itch a little bit. It helps me to understand a bit about how the world works financially. One thing I do realize, though, is I think I get how investments work. If you're making an investment, you want to make sure that you are buying into something good, that you're putting your money into something that's going places, that's going to last, something that's going to keep on bringing benefits to you and to others. For instance, BHP has proven to be a good long-term investment for many. Blockbuster Video, not so much. And Jesus here, frankly, he is offering us his top investment tip. Jesus is the ultimate insider. He's stood right back. He's seen what the future holds. He can see what's going to be happening big picture in the globe. And he wants to warn us, earthly treasure, it's destined to take a dive. It's not going to hold its value forever. As he says, thieves come in and take it. Moths come in and destroy it. Death comes along and suddenly it's useless to you. This stuff you worked so hard on comes to nothing. The bottom is falling out of that market. But thankfully, we can switch our investments to something that Jesus says is actually going to last, is actually going to help you in the long run. We can, as Jesus says, invest instead in treasure in heaven. And this is the only thing that's going to be of any value in the long run. Once these 80 odd years that we spend wandering the globe have reached their conclusion, and you're forced to let go of all the stuff you accumulated, at that point, only the treasure in heaven that Jesus has secured for us is going to be of any value. And making the switch is dead easy, says Jesus. Here's how you do it. You take the wealth that God has temporarily entrusted to you. Possessions, money, whatever it is. You take that and you start to give it away. You start using it not for your own benefit, not for just the benefit of your immediate family, but you find other people and you give it to them. You don't just use it for your own security, but you use it for the good of others. You get rid of it. You get it out of your life. You let it leave your hands. You let it leave your pockets. You let it leave your bank accounts. You get rid of it in radical ways that others are going to look at and think, oh my goodness, have they lost their mind? As Jesus says here to these people, sell your possessions. Give to the poor. Stop being so in love with your stuff that you hoard it like it's like your smog. But instead, go, I don't need this. I'd much rather this be used to love that person. That's an investment worth making. And none of this is important to be clear on, none of this is in order for us to buy God's love. But it's in order to show that my heart is not caught up in the things of this world. My heart is not in my garage. My heart is not in my wallet. My heart is not in my next holiday, or my heart is not in my next renovation. My heart is in Jesus. He's the only one who is bringing me the satisfaction that I'm actually longing for. As Jesus himself says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart will always follow your money. For better or worse, your heart has already been following your money. And so be certain to make sure your money is being put somewhere good, put somewhere lasting. There's a reason why Christians have always, since the beginning, been such big believers in generosity. And it's not just about churches and missionaries and Christian organizations having enough money to do their work, although that's important. Brandy and Viv picked a good night to come along to church, didn't they? We're all thinking about being generous. I encourage you to get generous to these guys. This is a good direction for you to send your money. But more than that, generosity is not just for the good of mission, but it's also for the good of me. Storing up treasures in heaven, but by shoring up my commitment to God above all the other things. Storing up treasures in heaven by shoving away all these idols that are just clawing for my attention. When you want for God to be your source of joy and comfort and hope, then one of the keys to making that a reality in your life is to have a very loose attitude when it comes to the funds that are coming your way. The temptation when money comes into your life is to grip onto it, to grab tight of it, especially, can I say, if you are used to not having much, if you've come from a place of poverty, or if you've come from a place where you've been struggling. If that's you, and that was me growing up, this moment comes where you finally have money and you think, yes, excellent, fine, this is going to solve my problems. You latch onto it and it ruins you. Gripping tight to it says, this right here is where my security comes from. But having an open attitude, giving it away, keeping only what you need, that's an approach which says to yourself and to everyone else, frankly, I'm reliant on the God who guarantees my eternal security. That's where my comfort is found. As I wrap up, let me put it maybe as bluntly as I can. When it comes to money, we want to think that we can have our cake and eat it too. But we can't. You can't say that you treasure Jesus above all else, but then by your actions and by your decisions show that actually you're treasuring the stuff of this world. It doesn't work that way. If the lifestyles that we're living as Christians, if the lifestyles we're aspiring to as Christians, if they are practically indistinguishable from the lifestyles of those who couldn't care less about Jesus. Same investments, same houses, same cars, same holidays, same clothes, same bank balances. If our money is being used in the same way as people who think that Jesus is nothing, that's a pretty loud alarm bell ringing in our heads, isn't it? That something has gone wrong. That we are in terrible danger of forgetting eternity. We are in danger of God saying to us, "You numbskull, you made a very bad choice." Are we willing to live lives where we miss out? That may be where this kind of right distills down to. Are we willing to live lives where we miss out on experiences, miss out on comforts, miss out on stuff, miss out on having the biggest things or the nicest things or the newest things? Are we ready to miss out in noticeable ways? Because instead of those things, we are far more looking forward to what Jesus has in store for us and for others. And we want for as many people as possible to know that lasting treasure, and we let that decision flow through to what happens with our money. Now, living that way, living Jesus' way when it comes to money, it requires radical action. It requires radical decisions. It will not just happen by accident. Maybe today is a good day to start taking some steps to confirm where it is that your hope really lies.